Presenters today. This is Renard and Spencer, and your description says Rob, so this is not Rob. That's what I just learned. But he can introduce himself. So Renard has been in counseling practice with Ohio youth since 1992. In 2007, he founded the Packard Institute in Akron, providing a range of clinical counseling levels of care, as well as a community center providing recovery-oriented systems of care. And to date, they've engaged over 1,400 Ohio families.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to
It's very
introduce
official.
my friend, my cohort, colleague, and fellow tribal member, Spencer Baker here. Spencer, we both have the honor of being in this Shawnee Nation to present. Spencer's parents are both alumni of this school. I'd also like to introduce my lovely assistant, Magdalena. She is also part of the tribe, naturally, and really share with you something that that we're dialing into and have for 10 years now. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary on the 1st of May, 2007. A little background about myself. I'm also a person in long-term recovery as well. And presumably on the 1st of August of this year, I will have my silver anniversary, which is 25 years. Credit to the Great Spirit and my tribe. And this is where we're going. Again, I started directly in as a counselor, and I trained as a counselor, a clinical counselor, and then a psychologist. But we have found a level of care, a platform of a way of approaching things that is really potentiating our team, our tribe, as it were. As you know, we are also in the death grip of an epidemic, the scope of which we have not seen. We've got nothing to compare it to. And, I went to seminary, but the one thing they didn't teach us was how to sit with a grieving mother, or how to bury a 23-year-old with 3 babies, and how to tell that mom that somehow this is all part of God's will, which I don't buy. I would suggest to you out here, if there is an other, and if there is a God's will involved, that we can all step our game up, and you are exactly the people to do so. To really step our game up and to meet this challenge, nose to nose, as it were. I know the surrounding counties are among the hotspots of overdose death, as is Akron, where we're from. So in building our tribe, unfortunately, a lot of the ceremony, and we integrate ceremony into everything we do. The Misfits shirt cannot be purchased at any cost. It has to be earned. And it is earned very ceremonially. And we also have a ceremony whereby I have an M1A1 United States Army issued dog tag stamper. And we stamp out dog tags for folks. And with their credo, we have them come up with a belief statement, a very short belief statement, something that they're willing to stand for. Perhaps something that they're willing to wear next to their heart. And we do elaborate, layered, ceremonial ritual, often based around Native American traditions. So, as you know, I think it's Montgomery County might be in the lead, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, correct.
I think Summit County is right behind you, with to date 349 overdose deaths. And when you consider a county our size, it's in terms of a public health crisis, pandemic, that there's nothing to compare it to. So we've had to learn how to just cope with the trauma. And really, among my concerns, of course, it's for the young people that come to us. But I sometimes can't fathom what this is going to happen to the following generations, and sort of the compounding trauma, as it were, and as it happens to our first responders, our policemen. Are we going to become so embittered and cynical? And of course, I'm worried to death about my staff and you all, particularly students in training. You know, if you step into this, you know, this is a burnishing, you know, losing people at this rate is a burnishing experience. And again, I have to maintain that if this were, for instance, the Zika virus or Ebola, we'd drop the 82nd Airborne on Montgomery County and Summit County. And I know, because I was in the 82nd Airborne. And we jumped out of airplanes for a lot less than the casualties that we're experiencing now. That's the downside. The upside is that there's a new approach, not necessarily new. In the 2000s, if you're familiar with William White and Great Lakes, they came up with a theoretical model, recovery-oriented systems of care, ROSC is the acronym, and recovery management theory. And if you go to williamwhitepapers.org, this is all open source material. So it was sort of a revolution. So among other things, you know, we'll do in a very short amount of time, is I'm going to invite you to join the revolution. And it's really going to take that kind of response, you know, a total war response. I mean, the war was declared during Nixon's administration, the war on drugs. I'm sure you would agree, this has not been a war on drugs. It's been a war on human beings. And it's been a catastrophic failure. We have 2.5 million Americans incarcerated largely under irregular, ununiformly enforced drug policy. But yeah, you are the providers. You will be where the rubber hits the road for many families who come to you. Interestingly enough, this area, this campus, all the way down the Ohio River is Shawnee country. This is where the Shawnee practiced. And the Shawnee has been practicing recovery healing, recovery circles for hundreds of years. Now I'm from Akron, Ohio, right? What started in Akron, Ohio? That's right, and it's a sacred thing, and I'm a huge fan. Our main building is within 100 meters of Dr. Bob's, the co-founder of AA's final resting place. That's no accident. I'm a huge fan.
Bless you.
Bless you, my dear. But I've been around for a while, and I've seen AA. I've seen people tumble into the chasm of oblivion where AA could not meet their needs. And let's keep it barbershop here. We keep sending them through the exact same treatment modalities, and they fail again and again and again. And then we point our finger at them and say, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do our program? Maybe it's incumbent upon you, this generation of providers, to come up with something a little bit more eclectic, a little more wide-ranging. And really, I can show you what we do, but I would suggest you can do something equal to or greater than what we're doing. Because each of you is imbued with a unique, powerful gift. You have something entirely unique to your tribe. And you can recreate that and empower others through your gifts. We have taken on kind of an outward-bound style, adventure-oriented, very experiential approach. It seems to be helpful in the face of the opioid crisis in that opioid dependence is a very compelling neurochemical dependence. It entrenches very deeply. And if we're going to tell people to go to AA, we better have something equal to or greater than the compelling nature of opioid dependence. We need to provide a range of choices. Among them, 12-step recovery. but you have to feel it in the very fiber of your being. And that's kind of where we're coming from. Again, I started as a young therapist, I made my share of mistakes. And it's never about that, it's about picking yourself up and moving forward with what you know and what you can believe. Katawa, I know I'm going to miss that one. This is the brother of Tecumseh, and let me tell you his story. Great story. Tenskwatawa was known as he became known as the Shawnee Prophet. Now, he wasn't always known as the Shawnee Prophet. He was a stinking, arrogant, boastful, loud, drunk. Stinking drunk. He was so useless, he couldn't even join his brother Tecumseh in battle against the children of the evil spirit. White folks. Tecumseh he could tell a good yarn by the campfire, and in fact, one night at the campfire, when he was drunkenly recounting his fictitious exploits, he fell into that fire. And he had some cathartic, transformational experience. And this is the land of Tenskwatawa, right here. He has this experience, never drinks again in his life, and became a tremendous fighter, soldier, warrior, and started the tradition, the Shawnee tradition of recovery circles, of which many of the First Nations modeled their own recovery traditions from. Tenskwatawa. I'd like to say we can claim him as an Ohio brother. And again, in your own practice, in your own journey professionally and even personally, know that you can invoke the spirit of the Shawnee traditions from this very land beneath us. I just taught actually in Portsmouth, a couple weeks back, I taught and graduated and certified their first recovery support, peer support class. Ohio now certifies peer recovery supporters. I still call them recovery coaches. Ohio certified peer recovery supporters. Is that the term now?
Yes.
Okay. Is anyone here from Portsmouth? Or know of the area? It is also Shawnee country. So I don't have to tell you that that land fairly resonates trauma. If you've had an occasion to read Sam Quinones' book, Dreamland, it'll give you a window on that world. Not only economic trauma, of course, but also the trauma of the opiate epidemic. In Portsmouth's case, coming up through the pill mills, Sinaloa, Mexican heroin cartels, and that class was the most magnificent, resilient, toughest class I've ever taught. They were wonderful. And you have to survive what Scioto County and the area has endured. And I went to a meeting there in Portsmouth, and there was a young cat sat right next to me. The comment, the meeting was called the Shawnee meeting, actually. So I had to tell my trip about Tenskwatawa, right? It's like, I had to share with them this amazing tradition. The comments came around to the young brother sitting next to me, and he was sweating the whole meeting. He passed. He's like, oh, I can't say anything, I passed. And at the end of the meeting, we said the Lord's Prayer. And right after, he said, hey, man, I got to talk to you. I was like, I'm a Shawnee brave. And I'm really struggling, but I never knew that this was my tradition. This is my people's tradition. So when you're reaching out to your people, speak your truth and give them a pantheon, a patchwork quilt. And I know this to be true from you in that I sat at lunchtime, my daughter and I, had a lovely lunch. But I watched the people in line, and I described it to her. This is a patchwork quilt of such wonderfully interesting, gifted people you will bring such magnificent things to your practice. Or I'm sure you all do. I mean, most of you do. But for your students, speak your truth. And the gifts are many, if not financial, they're many. Tribe's very important to us all. One tribe that I've led, my very first tribe was in California, where I grew up in Venice. This means nothing to adults, I assure you. But if you're working with adolescents, if you're a Z-boy, you might as well be one of the gods. Because the Z-boys were this feral group of, again, feral urchins, straight out of Dickens. And, but yet this was the nexus of polyurethane wheels and surf-influenced skateboarding. So, like I said, it's almost godlike to young people. And believe me, I leveraged that greatly in working with particularly young skateboarders. They know the deal. But it was very tribal. I mean, look at our shoes. You know, we were being individuals, of course, but you had to have. When the two-tone Vans came out, man, that was like, I think I had 2 shoes my entire adolescence. Kids get 2 pairs of shoes a week these days. I had 2 pairs. I remember them greatly. The Z-boys. So use what you have. Again, each of you brings something wonderful to the milieu, as it were, and use it. Use what you've got. Also, by way of Native American ceremony and other tribal structure, I encourage you to well, go ahead and like the Packard Institute on Facebook, but like our PITV, we do a weekly webcast, and we perform any number of ceremonies. We usually do it from one of our recovery residences, but unfortunately, a lot of the ceremony is based around death now. You know, in that time-honored American tradition, the dog tags have taken on another sort of life. And we have a memorial that the very young people we work with have built themselves a mural, gardens, and a living, breathing memorial to our casualties of war, as it were. And on a gentle summer wind, you'll hear the dog tags tinkle. One of the ceremonies we perform, we perform wherever we are. If we're in the middle of the Tuscarawas River on a cross-Ohio River trip, that's where we will webcast from. So scroll back, and if there's any tricks or any tips you can use, scroll back through our PITV episodes. Everything we cover here today will be there, and much more. And again, we go live on Sundays at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. each Sunday. So it's interactive as well. Use the media. You know, I know there's a lot of HIPAA paralysis going down to the point where people are dying on the very steps of our institutions of healing because we're all afraid to talk to each other. So I'm not saying ditch HIPAA, but we need to know when to communicate with each other. And you know what? The internet, that's where they are. That's just the reality. You know, let's talk barbershop here. That's where our young people are going to be. Instagram, Twitter, of course. PITV, like the Packard Institute, from which you can like PITV. You can also like the Packard Institute, Florida. And I'll go into that a little bit as well. I think it's worth saying that since we've opened 1 May 2007, we have worked with 1,400 families, that's just a number. I mean, if any of us had $10 million, we can work with 1,400 families. The interesting thing is that we haven't taken a dime in public money. That this is driven by the tribe. They are the providers. And we handpick them, we vet them, we train them. And this is where Bill and Bob got it spot on correct in 1935. That peer-to-peer modality. That's where you're really going to operationalize your team. You have to work in a peer-to-peer level of care. I cannot afford to pay $60,000 licensed clinicians. I can supervise them. I can supervise peer-to-peer, and it's a great entry point for people who want to grow. Ohio is, again, we've got classes going across the state now. It is now, as of this year, it is Medicaid reimbursable, which is a game changer for those who work with public agencies. And quite frankly, Tracy Plow, OMOS director, she gave notice last year. She said you have until July 2017 to have your agency on board with peer-to-peer. Well, we're going to yank your funding. So please know that is the game changer. And that agencies are hurting right now for that, to be able to provide a meaningful, helpful, that level of care, recovery-oriented systems of care. I suspect, how many of you have that level of care at your agencies now, by show of hands? 2, 3? Wow. Hold on to your chair. I would also, for the licensed clinicians and licensed social workers, I would ask you to seek a supervision credential for peer supporters. Get that supervision credential and find the most amazing people in your community. Find them and hire them. Pay them a living wage. And you're going to, I call it, and I'm an old soldier, I'm an old paratrooper. I call them my force multipliers. When we came into the battle space with electronic chain guns, 1 + 1 did not equal 2. I mean, those were force multipliers. That's how I regard my peer supporters. They can go places, they can do things, they can be an agent of change the way we counselors and psychologists, we just can't go there. We can't go there. Join the revolution, and you will see lives transform in ways you cannot anticipate. There is a lot of ugly images out there in media about addiction. It's the parents in the car passed out from overdose. There's another face of addiction and recovery as well. And if you can operationalize your tribe, we can put a whole nother spin and start taking away the stigma that's holding us back now. There is not a parade that happens in Northeast Ohio that we don't have some gangster cars in, and that we aren't marching. And you have to kind of see it in context. You've got the American Legion, right, and the baton twirlers, and then my crew, and they're full sleeve tattoos and dreadlocks and spinning poi, and it is the face. It is another face of recovery. It's a face of hope. And if we're hiding in anonymous shadows, people will perish in the darkness. We are the sunlight of the Spirit, and we have to put it out there. Speaking of gangster automobiles, I have to tell you about our Packard. This is our flagship car. And this Packard started in Ohio in 1948, purchased new by Johnny Lee Singer. Johnny Lee Singer was the dean of big bands. For a time, he was Frank Sinatra's personal conductor. Are we gangster yet? We're gangster. So Johnny Lee and the car toured the world. It wound up in Los Angeles, basically a one-owner car, in that it was, Johnny Lee died at age 96 and drove the car until his death at age 96 in the year 2006. At which point, his son, Eric Singer, the drummer from Kiss, gets the car. Right? And I know where every Packard Victoria convertible is, because I'm a Packard, right? We get the car from him, pull it across the United States, and we're in the process of a complete ground-up restoration. So that car goes down Main Street, and our tribe puts another face on recovery, a face of hope, a face of redemption, in fact. We call ourselves the Misfits. Mark, you want to stand up? The shirt cannot be bought. Many ask. It cannot be bought. It must be earned. to be a misfit, you have to step your game up. And believe me, this child has, and we'll get to that in a little bit. You have to step your game up in unimaginable ways. And I do mean unimaginable, because I have to tell you, we do some epic stuff. We do more epic stuff in one season than, well, I'll show you the money. I'm going to have to toggle between formats. I just got back from Texas. You know, when I was a paratrooper, actually, I joined the service when they released the Black Hawk helicopter. And that thing was so sexy, man. I really wanted to fly Black Hawk. I mean, that was very sexy to me. So I joined. Unfortunately, I had vision like Mr. Magoo. So I boloed out of flight school, and I had to become a paratrooper, which is, you know, all good and well. So I missed my dream thing, but I just got back from flight school where I trained on powered paramotors. So at age 54, I'm revisiting that dream. Those are the kinds of things we can give to our tribe, because I've ordered a misfit aircraft, and we have a fly-in next month in Ravenna, Ohio. I'll show you. We have to toggle between. Let's see. Bear with me. There's some new technology happening, and we are. Sorry about the sound. This is powered paramotor. It is not regulated by the FAA. You do not need a pilot's license. It is a flying go-kart, basically. It has a range of about 150 miles. It has a ceiling of 13,000 feet. Weighs about 200 pounds. You could break it down and put it in the back of your SUV. The wing is Kevlar. They're ordered from Israel. They inflate in 2-mile-an-hour winds. That was South Padre Island in Texas last month. And I tell my people, come to the fly-in. Let's get high. Now, not everyone's foolish or maybe wacky enough to integrate aviation. But again, it's not about my thing. It's about your thing. Right. It's about the gift that you bring. That interesting, you know, the things that you express, the things that speak to your humanity. Each of you has something utterly unique and infinitely powerful. We started with the Misfit softball team. You know, I mean, there are ways, and again, when we're dealing with opioid dependence, people have I mean, what we're dealing with is the hijacked brain. It is people's inability to experience normal human pleasure, normal sense of reward along those neural pathways. They have to be recalibrated. And 12-step recovery is great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan. I'm down, right? But man, you got to feel it in the fiber of your being. And whether it's softball, whether it's yoga, which also is a huge component of our culture, whether it's doing triathlon. Not everybody's crazy enough to do 150 marathons and Ironman triathlons. But you never know what turns people on. You just have to be eclectic. You have to get them to rise to their personal great spirit imbued best. And that, as clinicians, as social workers, as practitioners, healing practitioners of every stripe, is what I commend you to move forward and do. You know, tease people. Be a strength-based, client-centered practitioner. Focus on people's God-given strengths, and everybody has them. A little bit about my career. Since starting in '92, I've worked the inpatient unit at TCI, Trumbull Correctional Institute, which is at the time our Supermax. This is where we housed our criminally insane serial killers, the worst of the worst, inpatient mental health, in the Supermax. So I know from whence, I've had a range of experiences. From that, most of my career has been focused with younger adults and adolescents in private practice settings, acute inpatient settings, hospital-based settings, intensive outpatient, outward bound style programs, corrections-based programs. So I have a good sort of orientation. And in each term, in each space, the most powerful things we did were connected to the recalibration of that neural chemistry. The ability to feel just sort of a normal continuum of human reward. And it's not easy. I mean, we're going to have to be very, very creative moving forward. Not everyone can play softball. I suck at softball. I mean, if a ball came up to me, it would just roll right between my legs. You know, I can't do it, but we can tease it out of our tribe. You know, at this point, Spence, why don't we swap off? You want about the tribe? Mm-hmm. Spencer is, among other things, he's one of Ohio's newest certified peer recovery support specialists. That's what they're calling it?
Yeah.
Okay. Recovery coach. And we were also, here's another piece I just want to talk about before I give it over to Spencer. Spencer he came to our tribe after getting kicked out of an inpatient treatment center behind a urine drug screen. I have mixed feelings about using urine as the single driving component of program efficacy. I have real problems with that. And those problems are driven home almost every week by young people who come to me now in their 20s and 30s. Mr. P, we were jiving you the whole time. You know, kids know how to Google, you know, fake drug screen. And it's not that difficult. So if you're working with a program, my challenge to all of you is to not let urine be the sole defining component of your program's authenticity. And we're going to have to come up with some meaningful outcome measures. Don't look to Columbus. Each of you are creative enough to know what recovery looks like. Each of you know what recovery doesn't look like. And often, you know, with urine drug screens, the twain shall never meet. What you don't want to do is teach people denial or teach people how to obfuscate or to lie outright, which is what happened. It happened for the 12 years I ran Akron's counseling services for adolescents. Most of those kids were masking their screens. They were certainly sophisticated enough. Spencer, did you click out of live?
We got it right here.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give it over to Spencer, among others. So Spencer gets tossed out of treatment.
Nice.
What do you think he got tossed out of treatment for? Dirty urine. I heard it out there. You know, I've used these handheld screens. I'm not convinced of their reliability, and I just don't buy. I just don't buy into it. Again, it's the driving sort of defining component of it. Spencer, you want to talk about some of your experiences?
Sure.
Well, my name is Spencer Baker, and I am a peer supporter in the state of Ohio. Been working with the Packard Institute for over 2 years now, and yeah, like Renard said, when I was at an inpatient rehab treatment center, I'm a person in long-term recovery myself. I have issues with alcohol and other drugs, as well as mental health issues. and I've been in long-term recovery since January of 2015. And
What's up right there?
It is a pleasure now to be able to be a peer supporter and to give back, especially within my tribe. You know, what happened in my inpatient rehab was some sort of error in science. And we have this hard science. We have these urine drug tests. They're called urine drug tests now because it's politically correct to say test and not screen, because that means that they're infallible. Well, that's not true. I know that from personal experience. And I can stand up here and I can tell you that what happened was incorrect, but I would rather be able to show you with where I'm at today. I wouldn't be able to be here if my life was based on a lie. So I got kicked out of my inpatient rehab. They brought me in, they said, "Spencer, do you know how this could have happened?" And I said, "No, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand how urinalysis and toxicology works on that level. I won't be able to give you an answer to that. What I do know is what I did do and what I didn't do. And I know that I have no reason that should show you what it's showing you." So I came to Renard, and I said, "Renard, I am moving forward with my recovery regardless of what they are choosing to do. I respect that they have to have their policies, but I am going to continue with my recovery. And that will not make a difference to me moving forward." And Renard said, "You want recovery? You can find it here. You can find it in our tribe." And I tell you that because I think it's extremely important to understand the approach that we take with people. I think it's extremely important to understand that part of tribe means respect. It means trust. It means communication. These are things that are infinitely valuable. Infinitely more valuable than some of the tools that will name themselves to appear infallible, because they are not. Today, I am the manager of our men's recovery residence, and I work with our men as a peer supporter. I get to work with them individually and in group settings, and it is so important to me to remember those roots. I have what I like to claim as a self-made-up idea. I doubt that somebody hasn't come up with it before, but I was asked recently by a judge who I was speaking to about our program, and they said, "How often do you do drug screening?" And I thought to myself, well, that's an interesting question. I'd say on average we could do it once a month, maybe once a week if I really thought the need was there. But the truth is, we do a drug screen every day. I do a urine drug screen, or rather a social drug screen, on each of my brothers, which is what they are to me, because we are a tribe. These are my brothers. And I do a social drug screen on each of them every day. Not only that, Renard talks about the force multiplier. Well, I'll tell you what, when building tribe, when forging the connections that are so important to people in long-term recovery, and when they're new in recovery, when you start forging the brotherhood that I get to see on a daily basis in our recovery home, and I say recovery home with every intention that it is not a sober house. It's not a house where we just stay sober. It is a home where a family lives, where a tribe lives. My brothers watch each other. When there's something going on, if there's an issue going on in the house, one of them is going to come to me and say, Spencer, I'm worried about one of my brothers. I'm worried for him. And I can go and talk to him. It might not be that man, that brother of mine, has gone out and used some substance to relieve the stress that he's going through, to deal with the weight of the disease that he has. It might not be that yet. And a simple urine drug screen conversation is going to be the starting point of how I work with that man, how I work with my brother. I'm not saying we don't ever use a urine drug screen. It's a tool. It's in the toolbox. If we need it, it's there. But that is not my starting point. That is not my solution to the problems. Because the problems are so much more complicated than just that. Problems require trust, respect. In my opinion, they require tribe. We have these brothers, these sisters. In many cases, they are mothers and fathers. We are very family-oriented. We have children that can come to our residence and feel safe because there's trust between the brothers that are there. They already know when they're bringing their children over. They're already confident that they can bring their 2-year-old, their 5-year-old, their 10-year-old over. And there's not going to be somebody nodding out from opiate use on the couch. They're not worried that somebody's going to come crashing through that door drunk. We are a recovery home. We are a home where a tribe is flourishing, where men in recovery can come together and forge social connectivity. And we do that in a myriad of ways. We do that in so many ways. As Renard said, bring your own talents to the table and find the strengths in the other people you work with to bring more talents to the table. When I first got involved with the Packard Institute, one of the things that Renard really enjoys doing is a lot of these outward bound things. Okay? So, distance cycling through nature, doing hiking and camping, doing kayaking. I have several of my own now, which I've been blessed to be able to have, because I've made it the priority in my life, because that is where I am able to find the pleasure that can rival any pleasure that I might have gotten in my life before. It is above and beyond what I ever could have imagined pleasure could be.
Show them the money.
So one of these things that we do is kayaking, one of my favorites, and Renard will show you one of our adventures.
You want to introduce, because it was almost 1 year ago today, you know. that
Yes,
we were out there.
yes.
Go ahead.
So the Tuscarawas River flows from Akron and down to the Muskingum River, which flows to the Ohio. Still, my folks live down here. And I'd still like to do a trip where I do the entire thing from Akron back up the Little Miami River, and I'll end up about a half a mile from my parents' house. I'm still planning that trip, but we were on our way down the Tuscarawas River, and it was several of our tribe members, and all of a sudden we see what could be an otter. Oh no, that's too big. As we get closer, maybe a log. What is that floating around in circles out there in the middle of the river? And what we find blew our minds.
Always have a GoPro with you.
Yes. You'll never know what you run into.
Of course, our heroic dog jumps in after it.
Oh. It is.
You might want to give them the backstory about the mooing mom.
Yes, we could hear as we got close enough to see what it was. We heard the mooing of the mother that was just beyond this path, which is up above the embankment here. We have one of our young men, an 18-year-old who flew from California, 18 years old, to join in on what we're doing out there in Akron, Ohio, where I don't think he expected the winters to be what they are. But he has found his tribe, and he still comes over 3 times a week because he loves being part of what we do.
The calf was safely returned to her mother.
Narration.
Right.
I Renard back.
Right.
The idea behind this is not only to do something that is enjoyable just for the individual, to release the pleasure that you get from doing something that is out in nature, that is physically active and fun. There's also another quote that I'm surprised I haven't heard him use yet, but it's something that has been drilled into my brain over the last 2.5 years, and something that I will always carry with me. If you want your self-esteem back, do esteemable things. These trips, this was a 2-3 day trip?
3 days.
Yeah.
Guerrilla camping.
Yeah, just camping out on the side of the river. And
With a cat.
our boy from California, he didn't know what the cicadas were. Oh. I had to throw that in there.
Till one works its way into his sleeping bag at night.
Yes. I heard a scream. I thought he was getting attacked by a mountain lion or something.
Or a cow.
I threw him under the bus here, but it was certainly an adventure. The other element to that is that you're doing something that perhaps there was no thought that was something that would be possible for you to do, and quite possibly wouldn't be possible for you to do as an individual. On this trip, I actually took off a day earlier, and I came down a tributary to the Tusk by myself the first day. And there were a few times by myself out there paddling along for about 12 hours, the sun beating down. I looked like this shirt when I got done. But there were some times I was going, I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get up tomorrow when they get there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get up from camping out and then go do this whole thing again. You know what? When they got there, total renewal of energy. Totally ready to go. It is in the military tradition, but certainly any athletic team, any group that you can be involved in, whether it be a group at work that encounters a struggle, a hard project, or whether it's a bunch of misfits traveling down the Tuscarawas River, there is a challenge to be had. And when you overcome that challenge as a team, it builds respect for one another. That you didn't let each other down. That you went through something that was tough. That you don't think or you didn't think you could ever do. And you might not even be able to do it if you're alone. But together, the tribe can.
Spence, thank you for that. We're going to do some question and answers in just a minute. So I want to
Yeah.
have all your questions, ready to go. All right? So
If not,
we'll
you'll just have to hear us talk about whatever we want. So.
All right, I want to give you Spence. We will get to it. Again, a couple of key points also. If you're working with agencies, a common modality in many agencies in year 2017 is that when someone expresses the primary symptom of this disease, they get kicked to the curb. I don't know about you, but am I like effed up in the head? Or is that so profoundly counterintuitive to what you as practitioners are trying to do? We also have a saying, again, I have to draw from my military tradition, we do not shoot our wounded. We have guys at the house right now whom have known the struggle's real. They've known the challenges. And we have a culture, and I owe this largely to Spencer at that house, at that home, wherein if someone is suffering, they know where to turn. There is enough trust, and you mentioned trust, and it is a culture of respect. That they come out with this, and we give them what we call the warm jelly donut. Baby, and they are the jelly. All right? We wrap around in complete inversion from many treatment modalities where they kick into the curb. They usually have your insurance maxed out by that time anyways. But no, we wrap around and we step our game up in that precise moment. If not then, when? This is when they learn about recalibrating that, hijacking the brain back. That you can do it in a safe space. Again, I owe that largely to Spencer and his team at Emma. This particular recovery residence, you can also like it on Facebook, the Emma Recovery Residence of the Packard Institute. And as of Sunday, we're opening up its female counterpart in Akron, a home for female and LGBT people in Highland Square in Akron, Ohio, the birthplace of recovery. This is steps from where Dr. Bob has been laid to rest. So we certainly operate in the shadow of that spirit, but we also know that there are multiple pathways in recovery. And after 25 years, I've seen some good ones. And it's not about them doing our program. It's about us as clinicians, as practitioners, as healers, meeting them where they are at. I can't tell you, and I know you all had your training here at the great University of Miami University, founded in 1809, and in your graduate classes, they say you individualize the treatment approach. You individualize your treatment plan. And then you get to your public agency, and you got 60 minutes to do an assessment, and you slide the pre-printed treatment plan across the desk. Tell me you have it.
Right.
We have to look at the people in this moment of trauma as human beings. And it's not going to be solved with 3 AA meetings a week. It just isn't. It's not where reality happens. And again, I'm saying this as an enormous fan of AA, believe me. This is another face of recovery. This is going down the main street of our Ohio cities. This is about, Spencer put it, if you want to build self-esteem, and I can't tell you how many moms come to me, hey, little Johnny needs to build self-esteem. then you do esteemable things. Again, various incarnations of our misfits. Certainly, I also got to tell you, there's a gathering in Ohio here, and we just had the 82nd annual gathering in Akron, Ohio. And at that time, we inaugurated our oldest misfit at age 93. And blind. He flew up. Now, we have an operation in Florida as well. I met him in Florida at our, and he's kind of a cohort there. And when he heard that I was from Akron, Ohio, it means nothing to most people, right? But if you're in recovery, it's like, this is the most gracious man you're from Akron. I've always wanted to go to Akron. Our little funky post-industrial city. So we got him up, and the misfits were his personal escorts over a 4-day weekend. And this guy smoked them all. I mean, Art, 93, smoked them all. You know, back and forth across campus for this gathering we do every year. Yeah, Art is part of our Florida crew as well. But transcends age, recovery impacts every color, every age, every socioeconomic demographic, and it can happen for anyone. And I suggest, and this is nothing against Passages of Malibu or any other Palm Beach, you know, all wonderful places, but recovery happens when the rubber hits the road, and that's in your community. And if you don't have a layered, recovery-oriented system of care in place, you'll miss every time. My saying lately has been treatment without tribe. Treatment without tribe, you'll miss every time. And you will exhaust their benefits and kick them to the curb. You have, step up on your administrators. Tracy Plock already said it. She is, she's our director from OMAS. You have until July of 2017 to come on board. So I'm trusting you all to join a part of this revolution of recovery-oriented systems of care. I mentioned earlier that everyone earns the shirt. I mean, believe me, I get people asking me for the shirt every week, but they cannot be bought. They have to be earned. And men, women, we've hiked the Appalachian Trail. We've kayaked any number, any dozen number of rivers throughout the eastern United States. We're working our way west. But we returned last week from our Florida location, and the women stepped their game up in ways I couldn't even have anticipated. And Magdalena, would you like to tell the story?
Yes, I will.
Because she watches the women, right?
Aren't you going to put up a video?
I will. You want to set it up for him?
Well, first, so we were on a boat with our friends, Natalie and Scott, and they said there's a dead shark out there. So me and Terry swam out and looked at the shark, and Terry saw how its gills were moving still. She thought at first that it was a wave just moving them, but then she looked and they were moving up and down. So she swam down, picked up the shark, and swam it around and discovered it was alive. Somebody shot it in the head with a spear gun. And I went down and touched it too.
You gave it good energy. I'll show him. Why don't we show him? This is how our women in the tribe do it. This is last week. Does this young lady have heart? You gotta give it up for her. Bravo. So she earned her shirt. Right?
I actually earned it like a few years ago.
Of course you did. This is in terms of integrating family, and Spencer touched on it just briefly, but this child has had dinner in our recovery tribe every Sunday of her natural life. And she just turned 9. The day before this, right?
Wait, no. The 16th.
The 16th, right. Happy birthday, dear. Again, I hate to, we do got to leave some time for questions, and I don't want to leave on a downer, but I really think it's worth talking about the depth at which the epidemic is impacting our communities. And I don't think we can turn to Columbus for solutions. And I don't believe we can turn to the feds for solutions. And it is true that the CARE Act, the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, now law, and the law in November provide support. But the way I'm looking at it is right now what it's really supporting, what a great body of these So, again, the best thing we can do right now is get a hold, fortunately we have Senator Portman on our side. I really think he's an authentic voice for the struggle. But we got to step our game up with our legislators as well. And we have to do it now. Because we're squat in the middle of perhaps the greatest human health catastrophe that any of us will experience in our lifetimes. Again, 349 in Akron. That is in a city of 190,000. Do the math. It is now the #1 killer of adults under 50. It has eclipsed automobile accidents, heart disease. The #1 killer is overdose death. Let's see if I can. Building tribe. Find, use your amazing energy to draw to you those you can help. And bring your gifts, your enormous, beautiful gifts to bear in this fight. Questions? We'll take questions. Back here.
So, again, not to be discouraging or end on a bad note, so hopefully somebody else is something after me. The nature of this disease is chronic and relapsing, and so I heard you talk a lot about your successes. What I know about recovery, there probably wasn't all successful. Is that an appropriate?
Not only would you be correct, but we have any number of dog tags dangling in the wind. Because, most people's bottom anymore with this disease is the great dirt nap. It's 6 feet under. So you bring up an excellent point. The conventional wisdom for generations now has been, they haven't hit their bottom yet. That is such bullshit.
Ka-ching.
Sorry, I owe you a quarter. That is so counterintuitive for healers. You do not wait for a bottom. You intervene aggressively and with all the eclectic energy and God-given spirit you have. And unfortunately, even in those circumstances, there are still going to be people
Right. I struggled with something that you said. I have a real hard time with one of your statements that says you have to meet somebody in early recovery where they're at. And I would argue that if you're trying to meet that person where they're at, they're either high or their head's down. So meeting them where they're at isn't always the best place to start with somebody that's in early recovery. I don't know that they have the skills. I didn't in early recovery. If you'd tried to meet me where I was at, you'd have got high, because that's where I was. And so I understand what you're talking about when we talk about a tribe and building this community, but I think we have lots of those communities. And not every treatment center kicks somebody out when they get high. I've seen that in the place where I work. They work with people. It does happen like that sometimes. I appreciate where you're coming from. I'm just not sure that we're always able to do that. We can't always meet somebody where they're at. They're not always in a good place.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And it is your hard-bitten experience that's the filter through which, you know. So I appreciate your perspective, and thank you for mentioning that. Right here.
I had a question about, you talked about engaging family, and I think that's so great that it's not isolating the individual when you talk about connectedness and tribe and support, so crucial. Are you doing anything in that treatment plan around prevention, like you're interacting with the children as well? Is there certain parts of the programming that look at that aspect? And I was just kind of curious.
Absolutely, and to not do so, we have learned, we didn't think it up, we have learned through the hard-bitten experience again, to not engage the family, you're going to miss the mark every time. There has to be, or the significant other, or the abusive boyfriend, or the I mean, you have to bring that into the conversation, and to that extent, there are any number of resources that we provide in-house on a weekly basis. It is mandatory. We front-load it on every treatment plan, and to not have that conversation from go would be a huge mistake.
Is it targeted for the person receiving treatment, or is it, like you said, the next generation looking at those aspects as well?
Both would be the short answer, but again, I'm sure you've all experienced, you're going to get a lot of, resistant, often hostile, if you can get anybody participating at any level, it's a miracle.
Right.
But you front load that experience, We have found to not do so again and again. If the family's not a part of the conversation, you're going to have a blind spot. And it can be your undoing. But yes, critical point. Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to talk about that. Right here.
You talked about there's this type of tribe can be trans generation, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. We've heard from young people that they don't want to go to 12-step meetings with people generations older than themselves, but they want to be in groups with people their own age. And I really appreciate the making it fun and exciting, and as more, if not more exciting than maybe what they found in substance use. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are on, groups of young people, alternative peer groups.
That's a great question, and it has belied a decade or 2 decades of my practice. When you isolate a group of 15-year-olds for 3 hours at a clip in an IOP, what you get is 3 hours of fart jokes, okay? What we do is we cross-pollinate credible, older, young people with, different ages. So, in my opinion, in my clinical opinion.
So older young people, but not
Yes.
maybe generations.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Clappers, they call them in the entertainment industry. You cross-pollinate this. But that's a great question. And I do think, having done thousands of hours of adolescent-only groups, I think cross-pollinating is probably the future, in my experience. It will be in my practice. So, great questions. In the back here.
I was just curious of your perspective. I've been involved in recovery personally and professionally for decades. And I know I bump up against the whole anonymity piece. And I always say, it's like the best kept secret. And I know a lot of people in recovery are afraid, the whole promote versus, and people are afraid we're going to ruin what we have, so we don't want to, let people in. And yet, when you see something that works, and you see people in need, it's just, I'm just curious what your opinion on that piece was.
If you haven't seen the motion picture, The Anonymous People,
I have. Yes.
then I would recommend it to you. Because I think it's long since time that we bring the stigma out of the darkness, that we bring this trauma out of the shadows, and we can talk about it as adults and as a health care issue. Thank you for bringing that up. There could be no more critical component than to coming out of the light. Now, there is a tradition in Alcoholics Anonymous written in the 30s about anonymity. They say it's the spiritual foundation of recovery. But then they go on to say that it's just about principles and not personalities. So
I know, but it's such a big fear, I think, for people that are in recovery, that if we lift up the rock and show people, we're gonna lose our sobriety. And I mean, that's what I hear a lot of people, it's a big fear piece.
it's a huge divisive argument, as you know. I'm sure you've had the conversation, and you know, I'm not going to change anybody's mind about that. At the same time, on one sense, that if pre-existing conditions get written back in, then it's maybe something we need to look at, you know. Boy.
I'd like to just say something about that. I mean, I just want to
We've
point
got
out
2 minutes.
that I lived in fear for 27 years, and I don't have to anymore, so I'm not going to. That being said, I will respect the groups that I've been involved in. If that's what they say they want, I can respect that. But I will say that the 12-step fellowship, a 12-step fellowship is one of the ways that I have been in my recovery, used as part of my recovery, and is an ongoing part of my recovery. That being said, there are a lot of other things that I use as part of my recovery as well. And while that is part of it, I am a person in long-term recovery, and I will say that loud and proud. There's nothing in any of the fellowships that I've ever been a part of that has said, you can't tell people that you're in long-term recovery. You can't tell people that you've overcome a battle with a serious and potentially lethal disease. There's nothing that says that. And
1 more minute.
I've always felt we need something like Life Anonymous. I think everybody could benefit.
This young lady?
People that come to you
Yes.
to join your tribe, are they voluntary or are they like mandated in some way?
For the most part, we do not advertise except on social media. We are word of mouth. You know, it's just other practitioners in the community who refer. Very few of our people are court referred. So.
Okay. And then I was just going to say, like, from an outsider's point of view, I do think it's unique, and it's like if I was a user and I was struggling and I wanted to find help, like I think your group would be appealing to me because it's like not like a fun club, but at the same time it kind of is like a way to replace those negative behaviors and feel like a family and get that additional support. And so it was really interesting and fun to see. I wish we could have more of that because it takes it away from a normal like group home to like something that they want to hide and not tell everybody, but you guys are celebrating it, and like it should be celebrated. So
Thank you for saying so. That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
One more question?
I'll talk to Spencer afterwards. Well, here, fine.
Yes,
First
please
of all,
do.
I love your story. I think it was great. I'm really inspired by your confidence and just everything that you're saying. I don't know. I just think that you're great right now. And also, my question was, is that a Bioshock tattoo on your wrist?
yes.
Awesome. Okay. Look it up if you don't know. I know it's not related, but I thought that was a positive note. So I don't know. I just like it.
Thank you all for being perfectly wonderful.